Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 8. Alright, so finally I've reached the end of Stranger Things Season 3, only about a month later, right, so it came out July 4th, today is July 31st, so I will say, I was kind of negative with episode 7. I thought it was probably the most disappointing episode, especially just in terms of a penultimate episode trying to set things up for this one. I just thought it was just really lackluster, really underwhelming. But this episode, I liked it a lot better. I will say I liked it a lot better. I think this was a good conclusion to the season, though of course I do have some problems with it, but those are more general, as in kind of the overall sense and tone of the season. Whereas, last episode was just mainly with the writing and the main stuff in that episode. So, love to hear your guys' thoughts on the finale, and I figure a lot of people are all the way through the season. So, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the season, and also, where do you rank this one then compared to the other seasons? And I will tell you my thoughts on that towards the end of the video when I give my rating and kind of wrap everything up. This one's probably going to be a long one. I got a lot of stuff I want to discuss, and so bear with me if you can stick around for at least part of it. That would be awesome. But if you enjoyed the review, please like and consider subscribing to the channel. Then would really appreciate that. So yeah, without any further ado, let's discuss things. So of course we'll go over a bit of a recap here, then get to my rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts. And like I said, just wrapping up the season in general and kind of where it would rank for me in the 3 that we've seen so far from the Duffer Brothers, and this awesome cast. So let's get into this one. The beginning of this episode, really, really great. I do just want to mention, too, this is an hour and 20-minute episode. That's also what took me a little bit of time to get into this one, because that means, that's a lot of time, right, for me, making notes, watching along with it. That's just a lot of time to really focus on something like this. And so that, to me, was just an overall thing I want to mention at the beginning, was this was just a little too long, to be honest. I feel like they did an hour and 10 or an hour and 5, I think, for the last finale for season 2. And I get that. I just thought this episode, again, if last episode was better, if you included some more stuff in that one, instead of wasting time on some of those other scenes, this one could have been shorter and might have been a little bit better. I found myself by the end of this one almost forgetting what happened at the beginning, which was really, really a great sequence here at the beginning. And so we see a kind of a chilling sequence at that, but really great, even horrifying a little bit to start, as we see Eleven must get that monster or the kind of guts of the monster out of her own leg. That was just a crazy sequence there. She, of course, uses her own powers after Jonathan cuts her leg open, and he's about to go in there with gloves and start reaching in for this monster, or at least this kind of guts of the monster, to yank it out of her own leg. Just a truly horrifying thing, right? This reminds you of, Alien, stuff like that, right? Where you see the, monster or the creature inside of someone, just, so unnerving, right? Such a great visual here that they do as well. Very graphic, especially. So anyways, so we get 11, right? She uses her own powers, and we get the idea too that she's getting drained, up until this point. And I think this was just kind of her very last, thing. Well, it actually was her last in this episode of being able to use those powers. And she is able to do it. She's able to send that monster flying and gets it out of her leg. I will say, though, what a great sequence, right? Really unnerving, really kind of a chilling, shocking sequence to start. But I will say it's not a very satisfying payoff to the last episode, in terms of the cliffhanger, where they left it as Elle screaming and this thing's just in her leg, right? And now I will say that later in the episode, and I'm still not sure exactly why Eleven's powers don't work, and I don't think that's really explained, but I would say, anyway, my theory is because this thing was in her, right, and kind of eating her or something like that, affecting her powers being inside of her leg. So maybe that's why, and then maybe that's what makes this a better payoff, because she's able to get it out, yet her powers still don't work. Either way, I just, it was about a 3-minute sequence, and then we see, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray come to find them at the mall after we see a little scene of them picking up that they heard the food court, right, on the radio. So again, right? Not a very satisfying payoff to that cliffhanger in last episode. It almost feels like they were just trying to create tension out of nowhere. Where, again, I would have liked to see maybe something with the Mind Flayer monster coming back or something like that to end off that episode. Either way, still a really great sequence to start, and we get everyone reunited pretty much. Now with Hopper, Joyce, and Murray, because Dustin and those guys have already, met up with them already last episode. So then we see after Hopper and company find out what they have to do, which is destroy the key, right? Destroy that machine down in the underground of the mall, right, that the Russians are using to open that gate. So they make sure that the gate stays closed, which would, result in them, turning those keys, turning off the machine, and destroying the whole thing. So they decide, and this is like a real kind of shaky ground here for me. So Hopper sends the kids, Hopper, Joyce, they kind of both decide. But they send the kids home with Nancy driving, right, to stay away from the Mind Flayer and the Russians, after Hopper literally repeats to 11 that the Mind Flayer is solely after her. And she explains to him that the Mind Flayer is tracking me, like they built all of this stuff just for me, all this stuff, right? So wouldn't it just make more sense for her to go down with them, right? Like, wouldn't the Mind Flayer just go wherever she is, and now they have nobody to protect them? So Hopper and Joyce are going down there, and meanwhile, they already know the Mind Flayer monster is going to be targeting 11. So wherever she goes, this monster is going to go, and now she's not going to have any protection. Hopper's not going to be by her side. So the decisions that were made here, I mean, again, it makes for a good story, because then you split them up. You get Hopper and Joyce down there. You get the kids up here fighting the monster alone again, similar to season 2 and 1, right? And, it's a really great sequence, but why? Like, why does this happen? Why does Hopper, I'm sorry, but you got to sell me on something better than that, of why Hopper would just leave her after he literally says to her that the monster is after her and wants to target her, right? This monster is not going to go and target Hopper underground where the gate is, right? So anyways, just a little thing, and this might be nitpicking. I maybe, right? But just to me, it's a little shaky here, a little shaky. I don't know about it. Anyways, so you see Joyce, Murray, and Hopper head down to the Russian base there underground as Dustin and company actually go to that satellite from episode 1. I really like that one, and that's something I really liked about this finale, which I felt like they didn't do in season 2 as well, which was tying back pretty much everything that happened this season, even some of the more kind of things that you felt were unnecessary or just kind of wasted screen time at the beginning actually came back in this one and were quite meaningful. So I will say a lot of this stuff I was really impressed with, and this is one of them, where they bring that satellite back that Dustin set up in season 1, or episode 1, to communicate with Susie. It comes back here. So this was really great. And I do wish they would have waited to see the kids leave safely, right? Again, Hopper, Joyce, they head down, and they just leave the kids there to drive off, right? And of course, as they're leaving the mall, Billy pulls their ignition cable out and waits for them in the parking lot, essentially forcing them back into the mall because now they have nowhere to go. And this, again, it's just like, really, like Hopper and Joyce, all you had to do is wait a few minutes, watch them leave, and then once they're gone, then you go down. I don't know. All this stuff just seemed to be a little bit too quick, a little bit shaky. Either way. So, we see the kids are forced back in. The Mind Flayer monster shows up right on cue. And it all makes sense, right? Because Billy is essentially the Mind Flayer. So, the Mind Flayer's using Billy to coax them back into the mall. And that's where the monster then can come in and really do its damage when they're all in one place. So, it all makes sense, right? So, then begins an intense sequence, probably one of my favorite sequences of the series. We kind of have these sequences every season, it seems like, with the monster, but maybe season 1 was better. The monster wasn't quite as big, it wasn't quite as a big scale, but I kind of like that one a little bit better with the Demogorgon. Either way, so it begins an intense sequence as the kids try taking cover from the monster. We see Max, Elle, Mike on one side, and then Nancy, Jonathan, Lucas, and Will on the other. So the two groups are actually split up here, and I can't remember exactly why. I think it's because Max goes over to talk to Mike and 11, and then they're kind of stuck on that side of the mall. I think Lucas and Will and Jonathan are all behind that car, right? So either way, it took me a while to get through this one, so I did forget some of this stuff. But anyway, so the monster comes in, seems to target 11, like right away, right? And again, right what Hopper said just before this in the last scene is it's gonna target 11. Well, that's exactly what happens here. So they run into the Gap store. We see 11, Mike, and Max in the Gap store there, and just a really great eerie sequence here where the monster's arms are kind of slithering through the aisles, right, looking for them, because that, space is too big for it to fit it, by itself. And so I thought it was just really awesome the way it kind of sends its arms in there to kind of see and find the kids and then take them out. And we see with the mannequin that they get that's wearing the same shirt as 11. Thought that was really great, where they take out the mannequin and he's like, oh no, that's not her or whatever. And so really interesting too in this episode, because I feel like they gave the monster a lot of intelligence. I mean, it was a really intelligent creature throughout the entire season, but especially in this episode with some of the stuff that happened. And so I will say they did really make a smart monster this time. A lot smarter than the Demogorgon from season 1, that's for sure. So I do want to just reference this, though. The way that the arms were kind of going out there, feeling around, really reminded me of the movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, and I believe it's Dakota Fanning in that one from 2005. Anyway, so those aliens kind of had the same kind of tentacle arms, and they sent them in to feel out. Anyways, I love when the show makes those kind of, obviously I don't think it was referencing that movie specifically, but I do like when it kind of connects to those same other movies in the genre, and makes those connections. I love that. So just before the arm finds them then in the Gap store, and it gets really close as they kind of hide behind the next counter space there, and now the arm is right on them. And at this point, Lucas creates a distraction. And again, this was awesome, showing him with the slingshot. That's kind of his kind of weapon throughout the series so far, especially in season 2. He was using that as well. So really awesome. So he creates a distraction with a slingshot, and they make a run for it now with the new cable in hand. And something I didn't realize in the sequence is that they leave Mike, 11, and Max there at the mall. I thought up until Steve and Robin come in here in this scene that all the kids were together in the car. And so it is an interesting sequence because, of course, it makes sense, though. Mike and 11 and Max are all trapped in the Gap store, and these kids are on the other side. And so I guess their thought of this whole thing is, again, they're going to drive away. They're going to distract the monster, so then 11, Mike, and Max will be safe. They can maybe get out, or something like that can happen here. But again, the logic is a little bit flawed because, let's be honest, everybody part of that group knows the monster is targeting one person, and that one person is still at the mall. So later when this monster abandons them and goes back for 11, you kind of shake your head, and you're like, well, what did you think was going to happen here? Anyways, so they make it outside, but of course, Billy is still there in the parking lot waiting for them. Before they leave, we see he speed up to basically sideswipe them, right? Take them on from the side of the car. But Steve and Robin come in, they cut him off, and essentially save the day. We see Billy goes unconscious in his car as it begins to burn. So just a really great sequence there to have Steve and Robin come in, and we see them, of course, with Dustin and Erica back at the satellite, and they make that decision to come, back for their friends at the mall after they see kind of the commotion that's going on, the chaos that's ensuing there. So yeah, just a really great sequence there with Steve and Robin coming in, saving the day, and we see the kids drive away from the Mind Flayer monster, who this was maybe the best visual of the episode, was the monster kind of climbing out of the mall, like climbing out of this roof of the mall, and then just jumps down and starts chasing them down, like just madly chasing them. Really awesome stuff. So, and this monster can travel fast. I mean, really, like they're going top speed in this car, and it is keeping up with them step by step. So, again, kind of reminded me of a Jurassic Park type of thing, right? With the T-Rex chasing the car, all that stuff, right? Very familiar territory there. So, we see Hopper and Joyce then get to the box where they're supposed to type in the code after Murray turns off the breakers, causing that evacuation alert. So, everything seems to be going as planned. Again, love the moments here And I thought Murray was a little bit too much in last episode with Joyce and Hopper. We have a little sequence in there in this episode that I felt, again, was just a little bit on the nose, a little bit too much. But he was great in this in terms of comedic value because just this whole bald eagle shtick that they kept going with for about 10 minutes in this episode, I loved it. Like, it was awesome. And he just, like, hates these kids. And it's, I kind of, like, you know, at times, I think I kind of hate these kids, right? Kind of, and that's just the way that it comes with a story like this focused around these young kids. And for a character to actually, you know, not see what they're saying, you know, not agree with them, it is something that I just think it's hilarious. So I really like the whole bald eagle shtick, where they're, you know, coaching him on the radio, and he just hates that they're telling him what to do. Just really awesome stuff here in that one. So then we see after a couple tries at the code, they find out Murray has the wrong number. So Alexei basically told him an equation, and he got the equation answer wrong, and so now he has the wrong number. So we see this was awesome. So Dustin then calls Susie in Utah to see if she knows the number to the equation. So again, another great callback. Who we really even knew if Susie was ever going to appear and if she was even real. And this was just an awesome callback. But I do have a problem with this one. I have to say it. This begins then a very odd sequence of them singing this song together before she actually gives up the answer to the equation, which unlocks the box for Hopper. Now, again, really kind of great sequence to bring Susie in there, a nice callback, really great for Dustin's kind of character development in the season, but I don't know, like the tone that they were setting up to that point, it just kind of takes you out of it, right? Kind of takes you out of that suspenseful drama that's going on. And, you know, then just throws you in a totally different loop. And, you know, sometimes this can work. It was a little charming, yes. And I really liked how it came back later that the kids were making fun of Dustin. That was good. But I don't know. I just thought this was a little bit tonally challenged at this point. I don't think this was the right moment to slide this into. Maybe a few minutes before. I don't know. The monster's chasing down them in the car. And then we're hearing this kind of music overlay, you know, of Dustin and Susie singing. I don't know. I didn't love it. I thought that was a little bit out of left field. I like that they tried it, though. You know, it's interesting. And kind of gave a little bit of levity to the episode at that point. But just a little bit tonally challenged. I think it could have been in a little bit of better spot. But Susie does actually exist. So that was a great reveal of that scene as well. All right. So then we get to kind of the meat of the episode here, kind of the ending. So as Hopper and Joyce go to the observatory deck with the two keys, the Mind Flayer monster stops chasing Nancy and company in the car and heads back to Starcourt to go for 11. So again, like I just said before, and the kids are like surprised at this point. It's like, what? Like, this monster is targeting one person and one person only, and that person is back at the mall. So you really thought after a while driving this monster out of the town, maybe is what they were thinking, that it was going to work, that the monster wasn't going to go back for 11? Anyways, so Billy, we see, successfully tracks down 11 and actually takes her, you know, and knocks out Max and Mike before taking her. Actually, I think he knocks her out too. I think he knocks out all three of them. Kind of brutal too. He kind of slams like Mike's head off of a pipe, I think, or something like that. But anyways, and so he ends up taking 11, right? Knocks out the three kids, takes 11, leaves Mike and Max there. But we do see right before this that Max tries pleading to Billy and saying, you know, your name's Billy Hargrove, right? Trying to get him to snap out of it, but it doesn't work. And I do want to mention that now because later on, this obviously comes back with 11. So Billy takes 11 then out to the food court and lays her down, ready for the Mind Flayer as it arrives. Billy then tells her to remain still. So this is kind of the ultimate sacrifice thing, right? Billy's laying her down on the ground, ready to give her to the Mind Flayer monster, and the monster's ready to take her, right? And I think not even necessarily kill her, but probably take her body over, right? Because think about how valuable that would be to the Mind Flayer to have her powers only to be in its control, right? So really smart way to do things for the monster and the Mind Flayer whole thing, right? So then we see the arm comes out of the monster's mouth, and just before he kind of makes contact with her, and hits her. Whether it would have killed her or just kind of possessed her for a little bit, I'm not sure. But this is when the kids return with the fireworks. And I knew last episode that they were going to come back because, again, they just spent way too much time talking about and referring to those fireworks in the store that I knew they had to come back. So really awesome sequence here. Just a real satisfying one of them finally being able to fight against the monster without Eleven's help, by the way. And I thought that was a big part of this finale episode, which I didn't expect, to be honest, going into it. So as they throw them at the Mind Flayer monster, it looks like it's hurting the monster. Obviously not doing much. They're not going to kill it, but at least it's also creating a distraction, right? And this gives 11 then the chance to get to Billy. So then, this is really an interesting sequence, and I do want to talk about this one. So during this time, Eleven's able to stop Billy from choking her out as she explains some of his memories of the beach and his mother, right? And of course, we saw these earlier. Again, another callback. And I love this one because at the time, you're thinking, well, what are those, like, it was cool to see a little bit of a backstory of Billy. Maybe we understand him a little bit more. But really, like, why did we need those? And it was like a 10-minute sequence there, I believe in episode 6 that happened. And so to me, it's like, what? And now they call it back. So really great job there again. But this actually, with her recounting the memories, causes Billy to snap out of it and actually regain control of his own body. And I don't know how I felt about this one. I just thought this was a little bit shaky as well. How does this happen? How does 11, like, how is she able to turn him back to Billy? How is she able to take him back from the Mind Flayer? To me, maybe it is because of 11's powers. Maybe she actually is using her powers somehow here, but I'm not sure. She is touching him too, so maybe she is kind of connecting to his mind a little bit. But we saw in season 2 that Will didn't snap out of it. I mean, Joy spent minutes. I mean, we literally, watched minutes of her trying to explain really great memories, Jonathan too, in season 2, and trying to get him to snap out of it by telling him these memories, reminding him of who he was, and that didn't seem to work at all. Like, not at all. Will never snapped out of it, never even paid attention to it for a moment, and now with 11 doing it, it suddenly works on Billy. So again, I'm wondering if it is her using her powers and, somehow being able to connect to that mind or that part of his mind that's still left, and being able to do that, and maybe that is the answer, but again, I just felt a little shaky. I would have liked this better if this whole sequence plays out, and then Billy goes back to trying to choke her, and it just nothing ends up working. And again, this is where it comes back to Max trying to plea at the very beginning of this scene, where that didn't work at all. He didn't even listen. He just knocked her out like it was nothing, right? So again, I don't know. I'm not sure. The timing of this one is a little bit kind of eerie because, again, it works well for the story because of what we see next, right? With Billy sacrificing himself. But would that actually make sense in terms of what they've set up before? I'm not quite sure. Anyways, either way, it could have been 11 using her powers. So we see the kids eventually then run out of fireworks, which is just devastating, right? Because they grab like the whole store full of fireworks, and then they end up running out after throwing so many. So, of course, after they're done the fireworks, the distraction is gone, and the Mind Flayer then targets 11 immediately. I mean, the second that these fireworks stop going off, it focuses then. But we see now Billy then stand in between 11 and the monster, recognizing what really happened to him and what, has gone on, right? He's back to himself. He has control of his own body again. And he recognizes that what, he has to do, what he has to stand up for. So he's able to stop the main arm of the monster from getting to 11, but just a really heartbreaking scene here. So then we see the other arms come out of the monster and start wrapping around him, right? Taking hold of him on either of his sides, I think on his back, and on his kind of legs, I guess, a little bit as well. So they basically just hold him in place until that final arm comes in and just goes through his chest, killing him, right? Just penetrates his chest and obviously doesn't kill him instantly though, but it does kill him there for sure. So and a lot of blood too, really gory scene there. So what a great death, right? Sacrificing himself for Elle and the others. It looked good at first because he stopped the arm, right? It looked like, oh, like he's still got that super strength. He's going to be able to fight him off by himself. And again, just a heartbreaking scene, an emotional one as well. But such a great death for Billy, right? And then we see him tell Max that he's sorry in his final words. So he recognizes what he's done, and what a journey for Billy's character. Even these last 2 seasons, mainly this one, but also with season 2. Just really tough to see him go. Tough to see the actor Dacre Montgomery go as well. But I think ultimately he had to go after all he did this season. Just a lot of unforgivable stuff that you really can't bring him back in another season and somehow have a redemption arc for him. I think it's a little too late for that. But what a redemption just in what he did here in his final moments in sacrificing himself, and at least given, killing some time for 11, to maybe get away, even though she doesn't even do anything. Like, she just sits there while she could be running away and trying to run away and try to get away. She just sits there. Either way, I thought it was a really somber kind of thing, somber scene here to see Billy go. But what a fitting death for him, and what a way to go out. All right, so now we go back to the observatory. So just before Hopper and Joyce are able to turn the keys, of course, the Terminator guy comes out of nowhere. So, again, a good callback. If he didn't appear in this episode, I would have been a little bit, suspect here. Because it's like, so much time has been spent on this Terminator guy and Hopper, and kind of their, constant fighting with each other. I think they have like 3... I think this makes the 4th fight between the two, I think, right? Because the first one is, in a second episode where he kind of comes out of nowhere and really beats him up. Next scene is in that kind of trap door in the basement of that house. And then the third one is at the fair, right? And then this is the 4th. So, anyways, they got like 4 fights now between the two. And the Terminator guy has got the better of them. I guess in 2 so far. Hopper shot him, but obviously didn't kill him. Anyways, so we see the Terminator guy just come out of nowhere. He knocks out Joyce here, and then him and Hopper get into this like fight for the ages. Like, this is just a really great fight, really trading blows throughout this entire fight. Though I think it did favor the Terminator guy just a little bit more. Anyways, so the actual fight takes them out to the catwalk, right, of where this machine is, right? It kind of takes them out of that observatory deck and actually into the area where the machine is. And so just a really great fight sequence here, and like I said, drags them out there. It's a long one. I mean, it takes a lot of time and drags them out there. And of course, obviously the problem here is once he gets out of that observatory deck, he is in the danger zone, if you will. And that, of course, comes back. So after some great blows by the Terminator man, Hopper finds himself being held head first against the machine, about to die. It does not look good for him. The guy's got his, shoe on his neck, right, boot on his neck, and he is just ready to essentially just push him a little bit, and his head will just get blown off, essentially, right? But, of course, Hopper, of course he wins, right? So he fights back. He twists the man's foot, where, the man's foot on his neck. He twists it, just probably breaking it there. Anyways, so he twists the man's foot, which kind of gives him a little moment to stand up, get back up on his feet, and then he grabs the Terminator guy and just throws him into the machine, almost instantly killing him. And just, again, a brutal scene to watch. Really, really kind of gory. We see the blood kind of splatter up from throwing him in kind of it looks like the fan, almost, right? The fan of the machine going. And it's going at such a fast speed, right, that you'd just be, you'd be instantly incinerated almost, right? And I love this where he says, "See you in hell," right? Just an awesome, satisfying death here for this Terminator guy. I will say, just really a one-note villain. I mean, you want to talk about one-note villains. Whew, this is the guy. Yet, still a satisfying death. You just want to see the good guy kill the bad guy, and that's what essentially happens here. So, like I said, though, now he kills the guy, but the problem still stands is that Hopper is now outside the observatory deck in the danger zone, right? He's in the area where the machine, when they stop it, everything basically just melts. It basically incinerates everybody that's within the region of it. And I think it's because of the fuel, right? I think it's because of the kind of the deadly chemical that they're using to fuel the thing, right? Once the fuel melts, then everything around it just basically melts as well, like including humans. So then we see that Joyce comes to and knows that she must close the gate. And so she gets a belt and then reaches the other key. And this was really awesome. Joyce, kind of the unsung hero of this episode, or I guess of the season too. But so she's able to reach both keys. You have to turn them at the same time. So she's able to do it. She gets up, right? She gets up. She gets these keys. And then she stares out to Hopper. This is a great moment. This was really a great moment. Kind of a chilling, shocking moment here. She stares out to Hopper. We see him smile and nod. Essentially as if to tell her, right, like, do it, right? Like, you know, you do it. Like, do it, right? I'm okay with it. You gotta do it. Just really crazy. Just a really crazy sequence here. He smiles and nods, and really great special effects there too. It really did look like he was there. A really great visual there for sure with Hopper, and this is his final moments. Just insane. So then we see Joyce in tears, right? Obviously, knowing what she has to do, and we see her then turn the keys, and the machine comes to a stop. The gate actually closes up for good, or you know, for now, right? I guess the gate's closed for now. And then, you know, obviously it kind of stitches itself up and it looks like it is okay for now. But, of course, it also melts all the Russians in the room as we see. And when Joyce looks back up, Hopper is gone. Wow. What a just insane, heartbreaking, chilling scene. And I love the way, I know that they didn't show it because, you know, and given the end credit scene, you know, he probably is still alive. Let's be perfectly honest with ourselves here. But I love the way that they showed this. Even if he had died and they weren't going to bring him back, the way that they did this, instead of showing Hopper melt, they just show him not being there. I thought that was really awesome, and I liked the visual where Joyce just looks up to that same spot and nothing's there. Just a really impactful scene there, an impactful moment. Now, I will say, I do have a little bit of a problem with this because why would Joyce turn those keys? Right, after the heartfelt scene they had before, I just thought, like, was there no other way to do this? Like, couldn't she have waited a few more minutes, or a few moments even? Hopper kind of runs back up the catwalk, and somehow gets back into the observatory deck, and then they pull the keys. I don't know. I just thought this was, again, you know, creating the dramatic, really chilling moment that they wanted to accomplish. But again, forgetting of those little details. And again, like, that's something that they didn't do in season 1. I feel like it was really great in that aspect in season 1. And just a little unfortunate to see this stuff. But, I don't know, again, really impactful scene. But was there really no other way? Like, you know, Hopper could have ran back and gone to the observatory deck. And just a few moments later, they could have closed the gate together. Unless I'm forgetting something. I mean, there might be some obvious that was holding him back from getting back. Maybe some of those Russian soldiers were actually blocking the door. I can't remember exactly. But either way, I just thought, like, something could have been done. The way that they really felt about each other. And Joyce, we see her in tears in that moment having to do it. Just a really unfortunate reality. So, what a way to go out for Hopper if he really did die. Of course, given the end credit scene, we probably know he didn't. But, still, a really great farewell scene. The gate closing up also then causes the Mind Flayer monster back at the mall, or back up at the mall above ground, to collapse. This was interesting. So the Mind Flayer monster collapses at the mall, and the kids are saved once the gate is closed. But I was under the impression that the Mind Flayer was in their world regardless, right? And I think it's mentioned in this episode too. Made by one of the kids, that the Mind Flayer, of course, they thought essentially this whole time that the thing that came out of Will was still trapped in their world when the gate had closed, and then it kind of built itself up over the last year and a bit, and now it was back. Like, that is how the Mind Flayer was still in their world. So my question is, if that's true, then why would the Mind Flayer need the gate to be slightly open from the Russians in order to survive, right? Why does this monster just collapse and die as a result of the gate being stitched up? If it was in the world the whole time without the gate being wide open to begin with. So that is just my main question of this entire season, really, and something I feel like could be easily explained. I probably just missed a couple things, but I'm, like, you know, genuinely wondering how the monster just dies here. And to me, this is just really similar to the way season 2 ended. I mean, pretty much note for note. I mean, it's the exact same. So, I don't know. I would have liked to see the gate closed and then somehow the monster's still alive and they're just like shocked and they gotta run off, or somehow they end up killing it. Something goes on here, but it just collapses. I don't know. I just thought it was a bit lackluster, and I still have some questions over how that makes sense. Or was that whole theory of the kids just wrong, and the gate was just open this whole time, and that's how the Mind Flayer came in? That could be the case too, but I was under the impression that that was the truth. Either way. So then we watch as the Navy comes in, of course, about 2 hours too late, but what else is new, right? It seems like in the show, the Navy or whoever is always a little bit too late, right? It also, lets the kids save the day, too, before they come in. But anyways, so they save Murray and Joyce, though, as we watch, the scientists from season 2 come into the building with a bunch of the Navy men. So that was really great. Again, another callback. I'm not sure to season 3. He might have been in episode 1 of season 3, actually. But either way, calling back to season 2. So that was great. So Murray and Joyce are saved. The scientist comes in, and we see him kind of come into that observatory deck and stare up at the gate, and he's just horrified at this, at seeing what he sees and seeing the gate being opened again, and seeing that kind of slit for what it is. And I thought that was just a really great visual to basically summarize the entire season of just this horrified reaction to what this is, what kind of consequences this could have, and that somebody would be willing to do this again. And it really kind of similar to the way we all feel. It's like, why would you do this, right? We're all horrified about what the ramifications are that are from this, right? So then we see Will and Joyce reunite outside the mall. We had a couple of ambulances there, right, looking after the kids, patching them up maybe a little bit. And then we see 11 walks out to see Hopper, and he's not there. So he's nowhere to be found. We see Joyce heartbroken over seeing 11 walking there without her father. Again, just a really chilling scene, an emotional scene for sure. And it makes the moment hit a little bit harder because now we know the impact, not just on Joyce, but also his daughter now, 11, and not being, able to see her dad again in this scene is just, really great. I mean, not great for her, but I mean, just the way this writing was, it really makes it hit home, and it really reminds you of what this world and how these other characters would be impacted without Hopper there, and especially 11. Possibly more than anybody. So really, some great stuff and really emotional, hard-hitting stuff there too. So there were some big losses at the end of the day of this one. We see Billy and Hopper both die, although, maybe Hopper's obviously, he might still be alive. But at the time, I mean, this is a very, these are some losses, right? I mean, we had Bob in season 2. But Billy and Hopper, obviously that's more meaningful than Bob was last season. And so I do feel like overall though, a very similar ending to this season as season 2. Again, like I said before, almost note to note. I mean, once they close the gate, all the monsters die, and then we get a big character death, which in this one it's Hopper before the gate closes instead of Bob. And both deaths occurred like right before they were able to close the gate, and it's like almost seemed like a waste that they were killed, right? Because just a few minutes more and they would have survived. And so again, really, really similar ending to last season, but I do feel like Billy and Hopper, those deaths, kind of raised the stakes a little bit more perhaps than what season 2 was. So at the end of the day, not any of the kids died, but, Hopper's a big loss if he even is dead. So then we skip to basically the end of this one, which again, this was like 20 minutes of the episode, which I felt like could have been trimmed down to probably 5 or 7, maybe 10 minutes, not 20 though. Thought this segment just lasted way too long, but I felt like it was maybe the best part of the episode. So we see the buyers have sold their house 3 months later, right, and are moving away. We see 11 is going to go with them, who still doesn't have her powers, we see. And so that was an interesting little thing, too, of that, she's still, even 3 months later, hasn't recuperated those powers. And maybe this leads us to believe maybe they're gone for good. So that's an interesting development that, of course, I'm sure they'll explore in season 4. So we see her bid farewell to Mike, They admit their love for one another. Really awesome scene there. Jonathan and Nancy, too, kind of say goodbye. We also see Robin and Steve trying to get jobs at the arcade place, which was just awesome, bringing the guy back from season 2 from the arcade, and he was so great in that. Really great in that scene, too. So again, really great callbacks in this one. So they mentioned seeing each other at Thanksgiving, and I wonder then, is that when season 4 will be? Or there are some talks about skipping ahead, maybe waiting another 2 years before season 4 comes out here. Letting the kids grow up and then exploring a different part of their life when they're a little bit older. That'll be an interesting one too. And I do also wonder, where are the Byers moving to? I don't think we got an answer to that. I would think somewhere else in Indiana, but maybe not. I wonder how far they're going to be moving to. I'm sure that'll be answered next season. And then we see Joyce find the speech Hopper wrote out for 11 in his shirt pocket, which we see 11 read. So this was really great, hard-hitting. Of course, the letters read in Hopper's voice. Biggest movie, TV show trope I've ever seen. Maybe. I mean, probably not. But really, a character dies, and then a character finds a note, who then reads the note, but it's in the dead character's voice. Anyway, still very hard-hitting, and it works well. That's why it's a trope, after all. So Hopper's voice overlays a great montage. Really great. I mean, some of the, probably the best sequence of this episode, best sequence of maybe the season. It was really awesome. Really hard-hitting. So the kids saying goodbye to each other and just showing how much has changed in just this one season. All the dynamics and the relationships between these characters. Just insane, right? And a great song choice here too. We Can Be Heroes. Love that as well. The soundtrack of Stranger Things has always been amazing. And this season for sure has been really great. And so that was just really awesome. We Can Be Heroes. So just a really great sequence here to end the season and a great farewell to Hopper. To me, it also felt like the end of a chapter for the show as well, because we see kind of the last visual of the season then is Joyce closes the door to the Byers' house, which has been such a focal point of the series thus far. Like I said, it almost feels like with that door being closed, it's almost closing that chapter for the series. And I'm hoping for season 4 that it's something else than it's something else than just the Upside Down, the Mind Flare. It's kind of going to, propel the series into a new chapter. And maybe that's why there is talks about letting the kids grow up a little bit more and exploring that part of their lives now. So, just a really great sequence there, and again, kind of an end of a chapter. So again, my only problem here is, I don't think this speech that Hopper had wrote was initially supposed to be this dramatic and serious. So to me, earlier in the season, it was almost set up to be a comedic shtick, right? At the very beginning of the season, first couple episodes, it was all just a comedic thing between Joyce and Hopper of him trying to have this conversation with his daughter. And in this scene, they make it way more serious and dramatic than it originally was. So to me, that took me out of it a little bit, because I was thinking, I'm like, well, isn't that, that note was just a comedic thing. Now they're really hitting this home and having a message in there for 11. So I thought this was again a really great way of again making this hard hitting death of Hopper really impact 11. But I did feel like maybe they could have done it in a better way where they didn't. Again, another great callback, but I just felt like it was maybe the wrong type of callback to do. Either way, that is where we end off this season. And then the end credit scene, we see in Russia, 2 guards in a prison go to take a prisoner out of his cell after skipping the first cell because the one guard says, "Not the American." I think it has to be Hopper, right? It's gotta be. Right? They would not, make that kind of statement and make it that obvious if it wasn't Hopper. And I don't know what other American they would have taken here. We see the mayor get, basically rushed off in cuffs. So, no, I think this is all, this is definitely Hopper in that cell. But it is interesting how he got there, and I'm sure they'll explain that in season 4. So they take the Russian prisoner out and drag him down to the depths of the prison, put him in this cage, and then pull up the door and let a Demogorgon into the cage to feast. Just a really great end to this season and a really great end credit scene. I think the first for the series. So this kind of, again, it actually is a callback to episode 6. It really is. So the Russians ended up catching one of these Demogorgons while they had the gate open. I think that's what we're supposed to believe. Or maybe they caught multiple of these Demogorgons. They got an army. And that was the original kind of thing of why they opened the gate in the first place and got 11 to contact them from season 1 is because they wanted these Demogorgons and probably to use them as an army, as a fighting source. So I think this was, again, it was a reference sort of that cage that was found by Dustin back in episode 6, which you didn't think much of it then, but it does make a lot of sense that maybe that was the cage that the Russians used to catch the Demogorgon in and bring him back then to Russia. So a really great cliffhanger to this one, and like I said, a nice end credit scene here to kind of put that cherry on top of this ending for the season. All right, so in terms of rating for this one, I'm going to give it a 4.4 out of 5. And now, that's not the lowest rating I've given so far. It's not the highest either. I will say I think episode 2 is the best episode of this season, just as a single standalone episode. Although a lot of Netflix series aren't really judged by episode. They're really just judged by season because most people watch all the episodes in 1 or 2 nights, and they can't really keep track. But the way I've been doing it and going by my ratings that I've given it so far, episode 2 is my favorite episode of this season. Although, maybe it's not the most supernatural aspect, it's not the most horror, not the most suspense. I just feel like the writing was at its peak in episode 2 for these characters. So I will say this one, the main kind of gripe I have with it, it was good. But we've seen it before, it was too similar of an ending to last season. Like I said, at times, it seemed like a note for note ending to last season. Really, right? Like Hopper is exchanged for Bob this season. They close up the gate, the monster dies, and everything is fine. And then we see a little bit of an aftermath. So, and obviously the aftermath is a little bit different, setting up a new chapter for the series. But I don't know, going into the season, I thought, okay, like they're going to give us some really cool new stuff, keeping it fresh, original. And from some of the teaser I read, it looked like that with this new monster, but it just ended up being pretty much the same as season 2. And so to me, I would have liked to see something more original. Although, again, it was well done. It worked in season 2. Maybe they thought, well, let's just do it again in season 3. A little bit more pop, a little bit more entertainment value in this one. I would say season 2 felt a little bit darker to me as well, whereas this one kind of seemed a little bit more upbeat. They had a lot more moments of levity throughout. And so to me, again, though, just a little bit too similar. Some great callbacks to earlier episodes and plot lines. I think this was maybe the biggest positive of this episode. Season 2, I don't think did this that well. Season 1, maybe, but they didn't have a lot to call back, to be fair. But this one was just really great. Again, a lot of the stuff you thought was unnecessary at the beginning of this season, or even in Season 2, came back in this episode and really was meaningful. It really made a big mark in this episode, and I thought that was really great. A really suspenseful and intense finale as we thought it would be. And I do think the stakes were raised a little bit with the deaths of Billy and Hopper. Again, the stakes have never been really a thing in this show. Some minor characters have been killed off here and there, right, with some shocking or chilling scenes. But the main characters, Bob, I don't even think he was a main character last season. So to lose Billy and Hopper, who I would argue are 2 main characters in this one, would be, the stakes are raised, and it really does add some suspense because you're actually worried about these characters dying. And that's one thing I would like to add. I think a Steve or Robin death would have been really impactful in this finale. Maybe even rather than Hopper, you kill Steve or Robin. I think Robin would have been really impactful after the part she had in last episode, being so honest and revealing, and then this, just to kill her off here, or even Steve, who has been a really great character this season. I think both of those would have been really good choices to kill off here, and really would have hit home, whereas now it looks like they're faking out Hopper's death, and I think that's going to bring down the whole impact of that in this finale. So either way, that would just be my suggestion or kind of my opinion on that one. The ending sequence was great, as I said. Maybe, one of the best sequences of the series so far. Really awesome stuff. All right, favorite character for this one, I got to go with Hopper, of course, played by David Harbour. I think he is still alive. I really do. I think them saying, not the American, that's just not something they would say if Hopper was still alive and we didn't see him die. And I think Hopper is still alive. I think it's safe to say, and I think David Harbour will be back. But he was great in this episode. Again, the way they kind of used his character this season, I was a bit disappointed with. He kind of became this one note. kind of butted the joke at times, but I think in this episode they really did develop his character to give him that really impactful death, and it was really great. David Harbour did an amazing job this season, again playing a little bit of a different side of the coin of this character, if you will, in this season, but he did a hell of a job as always. Probably the best actor on this cast, really great. So anyways, guys, after all that, that'll just about do it for all my thoughts of Stranger Things Season 3. Thank you guys so much for watching this one. I really appreciate that, and I'm happy that I made it all the way through. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on the season and this finale, how it then compares to Season 1, 2 so far. To me, I gotta say, Season 1's better than this. I think Season 2 is worse than this. So I'd place this one smack dab in the middle between the three seasons that we've had so far. But anyways, that'll just about do it for me. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you then next time in my next review.